An expert in energy and the environment has warned that the world has already entered an era of disasters caused by climate change, which requires preparing equipment to face a future characterized by severe weather conditions. Expert Alice Hill said, in an article in the American magazine Foreign Affairs, that climate scientists believe that last July may have been the hottest month in the past 120,000 years, and commented that given the rapid pace of climate change, the past month gives a glimpse. The temperature will rise in the future. Hill, a researcher on energy and environmental issues at the U.S. Council on Foreign Relations, noted that world leaders had set in 2015 a goal to keep global average surface temperatures from rising by 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial temperatures in order to avoid the most catastrophic impacts to climate change. Scientists expect 2023 to be the hottest year on record. Although climatologists have long predicted an increase in extreme weather events such as hotter weather and heavy rainfall, some have recently expressed concern about the tremendous speed with which the climate is changing. Standard scores. Perhaps the sudden explosion, as Hill calls it, of record temperatures carries with it a harbinger for humanity, which is either adaptation with these variables or death. The researcher stated that the scale of climate disasters throughout this year reaffirms that it is no longer sufficient for governments and policy makers to focus on mitigating their impact by developing strategies to reduce harmful pollutants emitted into the atmosphere, including carbon dioxide and methane. Rather, the world must also, according to the Foreign Affairs article, pay more attention to the issue of adaptation, and modernize the infrastructure and policies necessary to withstand extreme climatic conditions. The author warns of the consequences of the failure of governments and societies to make adequate preparations, as the harmful effects of climate change will take lives, squander livelihoods, and destroy societies all over the world. In her article, she touched on the 28th conference of the signatories to the United Nations Framework Agreement on Climate Change, to be held in late November to early December of this year, in the UAE. And she considered that the convening of the conference heralds a turning point with regard to efforts to limit the effects of climate change, while climate disasters are still taking place around the world, advising governments to combine their efforts to take firmer measures than they did in previous summits. Adapt or perish. The shocking temperature statistics convey the full picture of climate impacts, Hill says. According to the author, the warmer and more humid climatic conditions formed a suitable environment for mosquito breeding, which allowed the spread of dengue fever at unprecedented rates in Bangladesh, killing hundreds and exhausting medical personnel. The smoke from the Canadian forest fires, which devastated an area the size of Greece, forced millions of Americans and Canadians to stay in their homes to avoid contracting respiratory diseases. A wildfire, fanned by fierce winds, has also devastated the Hawaiian island of Maui, killing at least 114 people, destroying the historic city of Lahaina, and driving locals to the ocean to escape the flames. Similar disasters caused by heavy rains occurred in New Delhi, causing deadly mudslides and flash floods. In usually dry Beijing, another storm in July brought the heaviest rainfall in 140 years. Politicians in a valley. The Foreign Affairs article goes on to recall that political leaders have so far focused largely, in their discussion of climate change, on reducing harmful pollution levels caused by burning fossil fuels. The other side of the issue of adapting to or preparing for catastrophic weather events like the one we witnessed this summer has been under-resourced, underfunded, and often ignored. Accelerating efforts to adapt to climate change is, in researcher Alice's opinion, a very important matter, as no country has yet sufficiently prepared to confront this phenomenon, even those that have already made large investments in this field. In this regard, the author referred to the efforts made by China to transform 80% of its urban areas into sponge cities designed to increase the absorption and reuse of rainwater by 2030. She claimed that those efforts were unable to address this summer's floods. The author concluded that there are major areas that require urgent attention in order to confront extreme weather conditions, the first of which is that governments must work to establish early warning systems to warn of the possibility of an upcoming disaster. The second is that countries should work to strengthen cross-border response capabilities, as climate-related disasters are often international, which makes a coordinated response to disasters essential. Third, policymakers must commit to closing the insurance protection gap, that is, the difference between what needs to be insured against climate catastrophes and what is actually covered.